We have the special assistant to the president disclosing XRP and ADA holdings. An ETF out of Canada for XRP looks likely as soon as this week. We have Accenture, one of the biggest systems integrators and consulting firms on the planet, confirming Hedera integration through EQTY Lab and Hedera Foundation. Tons to get into today, so buckle up. This is going to be a good one. I'm going to start with this because I know that this is going to kind of have a lot of videos spun off the back end of it. I did not mean to make a big deal of this, but, I found something that was just interesting, so I posted it. I don't think that this has any deeper meaning than just what it says. Special Assistant to President Trump, Director of White House Travel Office, holds XRP and ADA. This is like a financial disclosure that came out that I just stumbled across. You can see the actual document here. Executive branch personnel, public financial disclosure report. This individual here, Director of the Travel Office, Trump and Vance, 2025. And you scroll down a little bit further and it talks about other assets and income and XRP and ADA. Very small amounts, but did find it interesting. I think it's interesting, just obviously kind of how far digital assets have come, different people in different sectors. I'm not going to go down the conspiracy rabbit hole with this one here, and here's this guy's experience. You can see it right here. I also wanted to mention, so this just came out, Evolve XRP ETF expected to begin trading on June 18th. This is coming out of Toronto, the Evolve Funds Group. Pleased to announce that it has filed a final prospectus with plans to bring the Evolve XRP ETF to Canadian investors. Pretty cool. I mean, we're seeing more and more financial products of digital assets kind of spread throughout the globe. Obviously, pretty major. I would expect more of this to continue. Hopefully, we get more traction in the United States. I know there's been some delays on different aspects. Certainly, I think that the HBAR one was just delayed as well. But yeah, it'll be interesting to watch what happens. I certainly expect, as this technology becomes more and more adopted, we're going to see the same financial products that we see on all traditional assets being, integrated with digital assets as well. This document, real quick here, is pretty crazy. I think this just came out over the past week. Global Blockchain Business Council, 101 real-world blockchain use cases handbook. I am certainly not going to read through 301 pages here, but you can see some of the entities involved, all the way from DTCC to Ripple to Consensus to Chainlink to Hedera Foundation, Algorand, Euroclear, Qatar Central Bank. You get the picture. It's pretty massive. I did find some interest. So there's a bunch on all these ecosystems in here, by the way. You could probably spend an entire day reading through all this. You go through all the Ripple use cases. There's 24 pages from the Hedera stance. You have a couple of different segments. So you have artificial intelligence, and very pertinent to this video too, because I'm going to be talking about some of the EQTY Lab stuff. But actually within AI and blockchain, Hedera right at the forefront. EQTY Lab utilizing Hedera for verifiable AI development. We're going to be digging a little bit deeper into that in a second here. Also, ESG, Hedera is tied into here. And I think the Qatar stuff, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, so Qatar Financial Center Digital Assets Lab, which operates in partnership with industry players, including the Hashgraph Association. I'm actually going to play from Genfinity's end. I did an interview with Kamal Yousefi, who's the president of the board at the Hashgraph Association. And he gave some really interesting insight about how some of these entities within crypto and blockchain work. So the different players that are involved. Obviously, the Hashgraph Association has like pillars of adoption of the Hedera network. But what he really gets into, and it's like a 3-minute clip, is, you go from kind of systems integrators that they work with, like Accenture, who we're also going to be mentioning here. You kind of have the advisory arms that these blockchain networks work with. So, Deloitte and PricewaterhouseCoopers and Boston Consulting Group, you have the educational aspect. It's like a really concise, like 3.5 minute segment that kind of, I think is pretty educational if you're not aware of like crypto ecosystems, blockchain ecosystems, about all of the traditional players that are kind of involved in spreading the technology as well. So I'm going to play that. But I found this interesting because this gets into like DSS, Gate 2, digital asset activities that will be live. In other words, this will involve issuing, trading, and settling real digital securities. Um, and it gets into these different regulatory sandboxes here. Qatar Central Bank partnered with the Hashgraph Association and R3, aimed at fostering innovation in the space, such as tokenization of real estate and Sharia compliant bonds. There is a lot in here. There's a lot of XRP stuff. There's a lot of Hedera stuff. There's a lot of there's definitely some Algorand stuff in here as well. Chainlink, but this is a massive document, 300 pages. You can go and find this. It's publicly accessible, and you want to figure out where blockchain and distributed ledger are right now. And all of these major conglomerate organizations reading through these documents is why you saw like DTCC as a member, you saw Euroclear and all these different entities. So you better believe that they're looking at this stuff. I remember, back when I still had time to like do massive deep dives, and I try to do them now. Apologies for not really being here last week. I had like 5 podcasts, and 5 podcasts in 1 week is a lot. Pay attention to like these different entity organizations like the Global Blockchain Business Council and some of the members within this. That's what I always used to do, at least. I would look for like the digital asset ecosystems involved, so I can see Algorand, Animoca. I think I saw Filecoin on here somewhere. There's a bunch. Chainlinks down here. I'm going to miss some. So Soramitsu, which rings a bell back in the day. SBI Digital Asset. There's a lot. All right, I want to get into this. So I did not make a video on this last week. I know HBAR Bull made one last week, and he did an amazing job kind of breaking down these what this kind of represented. But so there was an announcement last week with Accenture, and for those of you guys that have been here for a few years, you know how big Accenture is. They're kind of all across the board. They're very big in AI as well. I think a lot of the videos I used to do kind of probably tackled like the central bank and banking systems integration type stuff, which they certainly are very big in that. But from an AI perspective, I think they have like 6 or 7% of kind of global market share for artificial intelligence systems integration, things like that. They're like $3 billion in California for artificial intelligence. They were kind of behind that. A lot of like public service infrastructure type stuff. So Accenture EQTY Lab, which we know is deeply foundationally like rooted in Hedera, and Hedera Foundation tied together. I wanted to take a little bit of a different spin on some of the research I presented today because I finally have a chance to make a video. I think sometimes in crypto, we see a lot of these announcements coming out of like blockchain entities, and it's hard to like get a gauge on if the traditional entities are like as excited, or if stuff's being spun out of proportion, things like that. So I found this today. This is, I'm going to mispronounce his name, Ayal Darman. He's the America's Public Service Data and Artificial Intelligence Lead at Accenture. And this is the post that he put out 5 days ago. This is directly from an individual who's leading these initiatives at Accenture. Excited to share that Accenture is, because I think that some of the announcements spun up where EQTY Lab and Hedera Foundation are tapping Accenture, but you have an Accenture individual directly saying that Accenture is teaming up with the Hedera Foundation and EQTY Lab to bring verifiable AI governance to the public sector, powered by Hedera's decentralized network and EQTY Lab's verifiable compute. As governments embrace artificial intelligence to scale services, trust and accountability have to keep up. This new solution delivers transparent, tamper-proof oversight for artificial intelligence systems built for government and other high-stakes environments where integrity isn't optional. As Brian Rich, our global D&AI lead for H&PS, put it, this integration enhances runtime governance and helps governments scale artificial intelligence responsibly. A real-world example of blockchain and artificial intelligence working together to drive responsible innovation where it matters most. Pretty major. And he actually hard links the PR Newswire article, so that gives it a little bit more credence here. I'm assuming that Accenture bought off on this article because otherwise you wouldn't have this individual who is the managing director accountable for delivery of generative AI projects and responsible for Accenture's North America public service AI and Gen AI solutions. So you're literally talking like government integration for artificial intelligence, generative AI. So this is the article that came out, which gives, I feel like his post gives this article, kind of the press release, a little bit more weight. Accenture will work with Hedera to create a playbook for the business logic of artificial intelligence at scale and implementation strategies that make full use of the Hedera network's capabilities in the public sector, including the Hedera Consensus Service, so HCS. So that's consensus. That's like timestamping. That's all the kind of the data provenance stuff, everything else, and Hedera Token Service. So that's, that's how tokens are issued on the Hedera network. Together, these technologies provide an immutable record of artificial intelligence decisions and actions, helping to enable data integrity across autonomous systems. Pretty massive stuff. What I wanted to also provide here, and I don't think that this has been covered, these integrations with these systems integrators, and we know how big Accenture is as one example here. These announcements don't just happen. They're not like, Accenture is not out there in the wild, like looking for blockchain for the sake of blockchain to implement. Just like I'm sure Accenture, back in the day wasn't looking at Ripple and the XR, I don't want to say XRPL, but looking at Ripple to integrate Ripple services just for the sake of integrating Ripple services. These things take like years to actually get across the line for integrations to occur and then to potentially be announced. So this goes back to February 9th of last year. As more governments look at artificial intelligence rules, Accenture tests software to help companies comply. And this is EQTY Lab at the beginning of last year. So this is Los Angeles-based EQTY Lab, created a new method employing cryptography built on the Hedera network, as we know. This says blockchain here, to track the origins and characteristics of large language models and provide transparency on their inner workings so companies and regulators can easily inspect them. The idea is to automatically examine the model that is being created rather than focus on its output, which I think is majorly important. We think about like, the adaptation of like Chat GPT and how we, a lot of people, including myself, we just use Chat GPT because it spits out something that might help us in a workflow or whatever it may be. At the end of the day, though, you think about artificial intelligence being integrated into like the fabrics of society, all the way up to like the government levels and everything else. I gotta ask, like, not that it's like awesome that ChatGPT is spitting out answers, but what's going into the models that ChatGPT is using, the inputs. Where's this data? Where's that data coming from? Is that data authentic? Is that data potentially going to lead me down a different ideology as a human being, slowly over time, just like, with the social dilemma stuff like Facebook and everything else? And what those engineers literally said was happening is that they were leveraging artificial intelligence and models to like change the way people think. That's why it's so massively important that what goes into these training models for artificial intelligence, that we have, verifiability as far as like what's actually happening there. Obviously more important when we get into certain critical industries like healthcare, government, different things. So what we're doing is creating certainty. That's a model that works the way that it was intended, says EQTY Lab co-founder Jonathan Doughton. Right now we're done in the first step, proving this is possible. So EQTY Lab's AI Integrity Suite was being evaluated in Accenture's Artificial Intelligence Lab in Brussels to see if the software could be scaled to serve the firm's thousands of clients, many of whom are in the Fortune 100. The work is being done as countries propose ways to address the promise and risks of AI. So this provides a little bit more background into the Accenture announcement here, that they have teamed up with Hedera Foundation and EQTY Lab. So you literally have essentially a background that this has been going on for, at least a year and a half now. So this isn't just like a shot in the dark thing that just got announced and like they're maybe going to trial some stuff out. I would argue that, some of the trials have been done. And I think if I remember correctly, I don't remember if I saw it in this document. I think it was in this document. I think it talked about like healthcare. Let me see. I can't find it now. I'm pretty sure like last week I had some of this stuff pulled up, and it was like healthcare and like a couple of other industries. The proof of concept that Equity Labs built around this was GPT. So yeah, find all this stuff pretty interesting. And then tying this all kind of together even further, and you really want to go down the rabbit hole, which I'm not going to do for you guys today. I'm already 15 minutes into this video for those still here. Accenture has deep ties to like NVIDIA, deep ties to some of the governing or the Hedera council members. I want to say ServiceNow. I want to say a couple of, definitely a couple of the other ones. Equity Lab, so the same entity that's built their solution out on Hedera, teamed up with Intel and NVIDIA. This is the tail end of last year to unveil verifiable compute. So this is all under the same framework here, at least in my opinion. Equity Lab, obviously a startup. So very nimble as far as, the integrations that they've made. And you see Accenture teaming with Equity Lab. It's not like Equity Lab has thousands of offshoots. All of their solutions, at least in startup land, solutions that work, all tie into each other. So if I had to make a guess, and again, this is speculation on my end, all this stuff somehow ties in together. The NVIDIA relationship, the Intel relationship, Equity Labs, verifiable compute ties directly into the Accenture integration, if I were to be a speculating individual, which I am. What's interesting within this, just so you guys have a little bit more context, the verifiable compute framework, now this is leveraging Hedera, unlocks powerful new capability and trusted execution environments available on the 5th gen Intel Xeon processors and Intel Trust Domain extensions, extending the trust zone through confidential VMs to the NVIDIA H100 GPUs, H200 GPUs, NVIDIA's forthcoming Blackwell GPU architecture. The demand for confidential computing has surged this year owing, you get into some of that stuff there. All this stuff ties together. Interesting, too, if you want some more context around it, go to this GBBC document that just came out over the past week that talks directly about the Equity Lab stuff. Really interesting. I think it's one of the more slept on things or narratives. I know crypto lives and dies on narratives. Artificial intelligence and kind of the convergence of AI and blockchain or Hashgraph or whatever framework you're using for distributed ledger technology are certainly going to be major. Especially given the context that artificial intelligence globally doesn't really have a whole lot of regulation surrounding it. And you better believe that they're going to want authenticity or provenance or timestamping or whatever included into it. Accenture is major. This is just me thinking about, how crazy these announcements are that we're literally seeing in 2025 compared to like some of the deep dives that we used to do back in the day. So yeah, major announcements. Also, huge shout out to Algorand and the ecosystem. I saw this. So this is from Sarah Jane at Algo. How cool it is, like the automation of just being able to leverage distributed ledger technology at this point in time, and like how quick things can be spun up. The entire front end demo was built using Algorand's dev software, so AlgoKit and ChatGPT in literally 2 prompts. I think that's really freaking cool. And then we also have so the context. So like when I did last week, I didn't make a whole lot of videos. I did 5 podcasts last week. I'm going to play a clip for you that gives a little bit deeper into how some of these entities tie in with like these real world institutions like the Accentures of the world or the Deloittes or the PricewaterhouseCoopers or whoever. Doesn't even have to be Hedera specific. This is like how these blockchain ecosystems actually like orchestrate relationships or integrations or real world use cases. And it's interesting to hear somebody that's actually knowing how all this stuff ties together. And I think it's super educational. But I did a podcast with Kamal Yousefi, the Hashgraph Association, one of the entities, the big entities within Hedera at the _Hashgraph. I also did a podcast with this was a huge integration point. So Dovu bringing 1.1 billion in carbon assets to the Hedera network. I think it's over 9 years. That was a really cool podcast. I did so Para is the main wallet on Algorand. I did a podcast with Para and Immersive. Immersive is one of the kind of premier partners of MasterCard. So there's a MasterCard on Algorand with USDC right now, which is pretty cool in different jurisdictions. I know the UK is one of them. Got a shout out from the Exponential Science Foundation. For those of you guys that remember that XRP HBAR institutional grade wallet, and the first kind of academic confirmation that Ripple custody, so Ripple's actual custody solution, supports the Hedera network. We did an article out of Genfinity for that and actually got a follow-up original tweet, which I was not expecting, from the Exponential Science Foundation. This is one of the entities that kind of spun out of the back end of the Hedera ecosystem, but Exponential Science is very agnostic, multiple ecosystems. Paolo Tasca, kind of sitting at the head of Exponential Science Foundation, huge supporter of XRPL, Hedera. He's been instrumental in a lot of government initiatives, kind of tying in the CBDC or stablecoin areas, a bunch of different blockchains. I think he helped to co-write the white paper of Quant, if I'm not mistaken. And they put out, our research was making waves. We covered their academic paper, which is really cool, and the first kind of academic confirmation that Ripple Custody supports Hedera. Ripple Custody also supports Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, Stellar, and Cardano, by the way. That paper confirmed. We also did a podcast with, I'm rambling now, sorry. The Hashgraph Group's head of engineering last week. We did a podcast with HGraph, so data access into data infrastructure of the Hedera network last week. We did a U.S. crypto policy article. You can go to genfinity.io and check out all this stuff. But we were really busy last week, so apologies for not doing a video. I'm going to play this for you real quick because I do think that this is really educational, and it kind of gets some insight into how some of these blockchain entities, either at the layer one or at the entity level within layer one ecosystems, really kind of tie in and work with, the traditional landscape for kind of integration of the technology.
As the Hashgraph Association, we realize that to really have the footprint across the world, you need to have strategic partners. And we believe in fruitful partnerships. We have like 4 clusters. There is the tech partners, technology partners when it comes to the digital identity, or when it comes to the real world asset tokenization, stablecoin, cross-border payments. So we have really a bunch of these top tech partners across the globe. The second category, as I mentioned earlier on, are large system integrators. These are, for example, Accenture, Swisscom, Orange, IBM, Wipro, Tata Consulting, and others. So we do engage with these organizations when it comes to large-scale projects. So we kind of focus mainly on the DLT use case, or the DLT touch points, basically Hedera touch points, and how Hedera is creating value. And when it comes to traditional IT implementation, that's something that we kind of delegate to these organizations, since they have accumulated a wealth of experience over the last 100 years. Then we have the management consulting firms like McKinsey, PwC, Boston Consulting Group, EY, and others. So we act more or less as the tech partners for them. So when it comes to Web3 subject matter expertise, then our engineers are taking the lead and taking the driving seat, while our colleagues and counterparts at these management consulting firms are the ones who are putting the strategy together, putting the vision together, checking the regulatory framework, coordinating with the regulators, with the policymakers, to make sure that the use case that we are working on is not only technically feasible, it's also economically viable. And the fourth category, as I mentioned, is the research and academic institutions at universities, because we believe we need to kind of prepare the supply side of the equation. And what I mean by that is really preparing the next generation of Hedera champions and developers by tapping into the talent of these universities, either by providing them boot camps or summer schools, or even offering elective modules within their curriculum of studies, and prepare them to be top engineers within Hedera ecosystem before even they leave the university. And these relationships, some of them are really a result of 20 years of professional experience and engaging with this type of accounts. Some of them have accumulated over the last 5 years since we started engaging or running the Hashgraph Association. Some of them resulted through existing relationship within the Hedera Governing Council. When you have banks like Bank Nomura or Standard Bank helping us maintaining and establishing great relationships with top ecosystem partners, that's something really massive. And then you have also governing council members who are also in the driving seat when it comes to the development of Web3 solutions, like Google, like IBM, and others. And we have, for example, also BitGo, who are one of the top custodians out there in the Web3 industry.
So I actually didn't, I spent like 4 hours, 3 or 4 hours, because I showed you guys that interview that I did with Kamal at the tail end of May. And to put together like a good piece of content, it does take like a few hours. I haven't even released this video yet, so I'm sharing it with you guys first. I also wanted to give a quick shout out to, I said I would do this. So I actually messaged, so I Flare Networks and Hugo and all the amazing work that the entire Flare ecosystem have been doing is really awesome to watch. I mean, especially you think about like all the flack that that Hugo got from, you know, a lot of different kind of people, and talk about just kind of willpower to continue seeing your vision through to fruition, which is not easy in life, let alone in this space. Vivo Power, which announced that kind of mega investment into XRP, XRP, I think for strategic treasury, a couple of weeks ago, also announced that they're going to be deploying 100 million in XRP onto Flare Networks. And I think it's really, you know, I reached out to Hugo, so hopefully I can get Hugo on for another podcast interview in the near future, because he did, that was a great, we did one with him, I think like tail end of last year, and I'm hoping to do another one. And then also this was last week, tokenized US Treasuries arrive on the XRP ledger, powered by BlackRock's Biddle Fund. Ondo Finance's OUSG delivers 24/7 institutional grade access to tokenized treasuries via RLUSD. You can actually go, I mean, we have tons of content on here, but we did a full article on this one as well. We try to write about obviously as much as we can. Anyways, yeah, and Aon and Algorand partnered last. There's just so much going on, guys. This U.S. crypto policy article you guys might think is pretty interesting. We tried covering as many as we possibly could. America's Crypto Renaissance. It gets into some of the bills that are kind of going through right now. It talks about kind of some of the strategic reserve stuff. So the Bitcoin Act, Clarity Act, Genius Act, Stable Act, 1099 overhauls. There's a lot. This is a really long article, I think, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it's a pretty interesting article. If you guys want to go in and kind of figure out, we probably missed some stuff, I'm sure, but we try to capture as much as we possibly could. Yeah, anyways, guys, I mean, special advisor to the, or assistant to the president holds XRP and ADA, small amounts. I'm sure there's going to be videos that make a lot more of that than I did, but I thought it was interesting and I found it this morning, so I figured I'd share with you guys. This document here, pretty massive document. I would definitely, if I was kind of a deep divey individual anymore, probably read through this, because there's probably a ton of real world information. And really kind of the thing that I think is, you know, massively slept on, you know, is the Accenture Hedera stuff. I mean, that rabbit hole probably goes way deeper than, you know, I even did in this video, but always like to kind of verify by actual individuals that work at these traditional firms that are posting this stuff, just to give it kind of that extra level of like, oh, okay, like all the press releases that I'm seeing, this is, I guess, just kind of best practice anyways. Like if you see a crypto, including on the stuff that we do out of Genfinity, even our stuff, go and double check source material as much as you possibly can. And there's really no better source material than the traditional entity themselves, or potentially an individual that works or is leading initiatives within a traditional entity like Accenture. So hopefully this was a different spin on stuff, a little bit more credence to the Accenture Hedera announcement. And then again, that rabbit hole definitely goes deep, I think. The EQTY Lab, NVIDIA, Intel stuff. And this relationship's been developed for a couple of years at this point in time for something like this to come to fruition. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it was a little bit of a longer one. I'll try to make, you know, one every day this week if I can. Problem is, if I don't find stuff that I feel like is worth doing a video on, I don't do videos. But anyways, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys when I talk to you. God bless. Thanks. Bye.